question from this.
And I know Anthony loves to talk about Alexis Lafreniere. Almost as much as I love to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is Lafreniere starting to break out? The short answer is yes. Long answer is Lafreniere looks better than he's been. Here's the thing. If Alexis Lafreniere was drafted, let's say, where Filipino was, around 20, there's a different expectation for him, and there's a different thought pattern that comes with him. This guy will forever have his career linked to two players, Quentin Byfield and Tim Stützle. Tim Stützle, points-wise, is a stud. On the other hand, who gives a rat's ass? His team is yet to play a playoff game, and they're not even close to playing one anytime soon. Quentin Byfield looks like he's turned the corner. Looks like he's ready to go. Rangers had a need at center. The Rangers decided to go with Lafreniere, who had more talent. And then the Rangers decided to throw Lafreniere on the third line. Quentin Byfield looks like he's starting, that he's arrived. So, Anthony, here's where it really comes to the question. Are we comparing Lafreniere for his own numbers and his own growth, or are we talking about a guy that's drafted number 1 overall and comparing him to all the players who are franchise players?
I am going to say he is not starting to break out. And I say that because of this. Marc, what line does he play on?
The Panarin-Trocheck line.
Marc, how is Artemi Panarin doing this year in terms of points?
Artemi Panarin is among the league leaders in points.
Marc, where was Alexis Lafreniere drafted?
He was drafted number 1 overall.
My last question, Marc, how many points does Lafreniere have?
Top of my head, I haven't looked. We'll say 36.
35.
35, okay.
So let's recap. He's been in the league, what, this is his 4th season now?
4th season.
Fourth season. He was 1st overall. He's playing with an elite player on Artemi Panarin in a top line role, and he has 35 points.
I know.
He's gonna be lucky if he breaks 50. A player of his draft status, if he was that good playing with Artemi Panarin, he should be at 60 points already. It'd be different. Look, if he was, if he was playing a 4th line role or 3rd line role and had 35 points and was pacing for 50 points, playing with Mick Vukota and Dale Purinton, I would say, yeah, this guy's the goods. But he's playing with Artemi Panarin in a top line role, and he has 35 points, and will be lucky if he tops 50.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's bad. I'm sorry. That's not, for me. That's not good enough. That's not good enough for a 1st overall pick. Because
again, but you just answered my question. Are you judging him as a 1st overall pick or a player that needs to be? If he was drafted 20, is it the same problem? It's sort of like if Eli Manning originally in his first few years, if his last name was Smith, would you judge him the same way? I think part of it is, Anthony, every Ranger fan should be happy that the growth that he's having. Every outside fan should be reacting like you when going, this kid isn't ready for prime time, and he might not be the best player in his own draft class.
But it's more so about the fact that he's playing with an elite player in a top line role, and he's still pedestrian. I mean, if
an elite player that dominates the puck, by the way.
I mean, for me, if he was, I just think the numbers should be higher. Rich saying his production's getting better every season, but it's not. I mean, last year he had 49 points, right? He had 49 points last year. He's on pace for 50 this year.
No, 39. 39.
He had 39?
He had 39. He didn't cross 40. But, again, going with what you're saying, keep going.
It should be, now that he's playing in more of a role with an elite player. I think a lot of Ranger fans were so excited when they drafted him first overall. They thought they were getting another Jack Hughes and they were getting this elite player, which is why these comments come from John trying to rationalize that he is meeting expectations. I should watch
I'm gonna back up a little bit what John says in a second.
I get it. Yes, is he improved from last year? I mean, at some point, results and points matter. You could say he's been the third best player on the team all year. If he's still not producing, what is it? What does it matter? I mean, there are plenty. You could look at guys that play in the NHL that have a good motor and they're responsible, they play well, but they don't last because at the end of the day, they don't finish, and whatever excuse you make for them, at the end of the day, you don't get the results that matter, which are points and goals. You're expecting him to be an elite offensive player, and if I were a Ranger fan, I would want to see him have at least 50 points, 60 points at this point in the season, especially playing with who he's playing with. That's all I'm saying.
Now, let me say this to you in your case. Christy is saying Ranger fans will do everything but accept the accountability to preserve their dignity. It's actual insanity. All right, but let me say this first. Let me back up Anthony and then let me go against him a little bit. The first thing to say for Anthony is if I told you I had a player on my team right now with 15 goals and 17 assists, and he was like a -10 or something like that. And you'd say, well, is that Alexis Lafreniere? No, it's Kyle Palmieri. It's you're not going to be as impressed. Palmieri was not drafted first overall. Does getting drafted first overall come into the criticism? Of course it does. Now, we're getting to the point where Alexis Lafreniere is just a player. He's not a first overall draft pick. He's just a player. Now, eye test will tell you Alexis Lafreniere should be somewhere around 25 to 26 goals. He should have more goals. He was a little bit snake bit for a while this year. His playmaking has been very good. Laviolette and the Rangers coaching staff think so well of him. Anytime there's a sixth skater on the ice, it's Lafreniere. Like Lafreniere is the next guy over. Have there been flashes? Sure. Has there been consistency? Of course not. We're not saying that there is. And I think that's the number one thing when it comes to Lafreniere. And I think there is truth in the middle, guys. I do think there's a lot more for Laf to improve. First step for Lafreniere for anything, get the 40 points. He gets 5 more points, that helps in his own confidence. He gets the 20 goals, that helps in his own confidence. So again, the truth is in the middle, Anthony. Is he a bust for a first overall pick as of right now? Yes, but that book is still left to be unwritten, and he could easily figure that one out. Because after all, every Ranger fan wants to give up on Kaka right now. As Stars fans, that they wish they didn't give up on Valerian Jashushkin.
Fourth season now. I think that you should be not like an elite player or the best player in the league, but you should at least be more than a guy that, will finish with 50 points in the season. Like I think right now in his development, given the opportunity that he's playing with Artemi Panarin, I would have expected at a bare minimum like a 65-point season from him. And it looks like we might just get a 50-point season. And to me, that's not good enough. It's not good enough.
And you know what?
You need to get more. You need to get more out of them. And I understand David saying development isn't linear. I get that, but it has nothing to do with development being linear. It's about if you're truly good enough and you have that much skill, your skill would have come out at some point and overcome whether it be bad coaching or, like, for instance, years prior, he didn't get utilized maybe as well as he should have. But then again, the reason for that is because he didn't play well enough to earn it. And if he was as skilled as it was, like for instance, if he was Jack Hughes, you would have seen the skill oozing out of him in those years, and he would have been given the opportunity to really take it and soar. You never really saw that with him. So I necessarily don't buy the whole argument that he wasn't given a fair shake, because again, I think that if you're really that good, your first year you start in the third line, you're going to get moved up because the coach is going to see that you're clearly playing at a higher level than anyone else on your line, and you slowly but surely are going to get moved up. And that never happened. And now here we are playing with Artemi Panarin on the first line, and you look at him and you say to yourself, like when I watch him play, I'm like, oh, that's a solid player right there. And I say that because I think he is solid. I think he's solid. But any Ranger fan is a homer or lying to themselves if you look at Jack Hughes play and you look at Lafreniere, and that person says to themselves, "Oh, I see that skill in Lafreniere that Hughes has." To both places, like you don't, because it's not there, and that's not a knock on him. He's a good player. He's just not he's not in the mold of Jack Hughes, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, uh, you know, Elias Pettersson. These are high end elite players
number one.
that you could see it. You could see it right away in them that they were going to be that way, and Laf is not that.
Which, by the way,
thank you.
is not. Now, first off, I've been waiting to play this clip for the last couple seconds because, after all,
to be fair,
yeah. Look, Lop has shown that he might have the talent, but you need to have the brains to put that together. And even though he's got the attitude of the moxie, I'm not sure if he had exactly the technical know-how to do it. Now, I do think him playing third line minutes or less under David Quinn slowed down development when you were number one draft pick. So let's take year one off the table. Gerard Gallant didn't know what to do with him. Let's take year two-ish. But at the end of year two, that's when he had the kid line or the lottery line, whichever one anybody wanted to call it, the Kako, Lafreniere, and Hedel line. And that looked like it was flourishing. And that was all by accident. The Rangers never had a plan what they wanted to do with Alexis Lafreniere. And the fact that you were able to say that about number one draft pick is pretty damning for your franchise. And it really is. Because at least when I know that Connor Bedard got drafted, there's a plan. And Kyle Davidson was doing the best to put a plan around him. I don't see that with Lafreniere. I don't see that with any draft pick in any organization almost ever. What number one overall draft pick goes to a place and he's third in the depth charts? But this is where everybody is right in this. He's not a slam dunk franchise player right now for the New York Rangers, but I would be cautious about moving on from him. Same thing with Kako. I have a feeling if Kako moves on elsewhere, his development's going to shoot up, and the Rangers are going to hate it.
And this is a fair point. And I think I agree with this, and I think most people would. But I think it's clear he's not any of these guys. But my issue is I struggle with seeing, because these guys that he mentions here. I mean, outside of Bedard, because obviously the jury still had its first year. Outside of guys like that, Hughes, Pettersson, I mentioned. I'm not even sure he's the next tier down of overall, like first overall picks, like John Tavares. Like even John Tavares was, hit 80 plus a couple of times. Did he get 90? He might have gotten 89 or 90 in his first year in Toronto. I don't see Lafreniere in that level either. I mean, I don't think he's gonna score 80 points, 90 points. I think. I mean, what I see a 60 to 70 point guy, and that's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, I think anybody would take it. would take a 60 to 70 point player on your team. But I don't even think he's John Tavares point production. Um, and I'm not listen. You could cherry pick stats. I'm not talking about 5-on-5. I'm talking about point totals at the end of a year. I don't I don't know. Like I said, John Tavares has had years where he's had 80 points, close to 90 points. I don't think, and I could be wrong. I'll be gladly admit I'm wrong. I've done it before. I don't think Lafreniere is going to reach that level, 80, 90 points. I think he's going to settle in between a 65 and 70 point player in a few years, maybe. I don't even think he's John Tavares. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, but also let's also not kid ourselves. He's playing on a team where he's not going to be the focal point of the team at any point. There's Kreider, there's Zibanejad, there's Panarin, there's Vinny Trocheck, who came in the middle of his career and is more of a focal point of the team than Alexis Lafreniere. Now, and I'm not saying all these are bad things or good things or whatever. I'm saying that's what does hinder improvement. What other teams would draft a first and a second overall player in back-to-back years, and they're not the focal points of their franchise? I'm not even sure if they're in the 7 and 8 category of the focal points of that franchise. Because for the Rangers, you had Shesterkin coming in to replace Lundqvist. So there's one. Then you have, again, as Chris T saying right here, Marner, Matthews, Nylander, Kane, Taves, Malk, and Crosby is going down the list. They were all amazing at 22. Stop this now. But again, Chris, all those players you just mentioned in there, and we could bring it up again if we wanted to, but let's just say all those players that you mentioned right in there, they were all brought in to be the number one center, the number two guy. Lafreniere's been a number three guy, and even his natural position is left wing. So he's got to learn a brand new position, which you get some of us that play NHL 2000 or whatever number you want to say it is. I forgot what year we're on. I'm sorry. I'm old.
No,
can't help that. But
Marc,
it's a lot harder to switch wings.
You are right. You were right. And what David is kind of reaffirming the point that you're making. But now I go back to this and ask you, if you put I'm just going to pick a player. If you put Elias Pettersson on the third line, what do you think would happen? He's insanely skilled. He most likely would have showed that he deserves to be moved up with his play. It's kind of a circle that we just keep going back to. If Lafreniere was as skilled as the other guys, despite playing on the third line, his play would have dictated him being moved up to the first line, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the part that is missing inside of his game. He's not.
All right. Glad you said
any
that.
Of those guys.
Because Anthony, let's keep that circle going a little bit. When you look up and you know you're not going to make it there because they're playing some half-wit like Ryan Strome on the top power play unit. Yes, they did. And you're going, all right, well, am I ever going to get a shot at this? Or Colin Blackwell was on power play 2. There are some of these things. It then kills your confidence. And once your confidence is shot, it doesn't matter anything else. That's what's so big about the reason why Kakko is now being talked about with the New York Rangers, because he was just on a 5-game point scoring streak, because you need your confidence. If you don't have your confidence in doing anything, you're completely lost. And no matter how good of a player you think you are, if you think everybody else perceives you as garbage, it doesn't matter. You could be Wayne Gretzky. You could be Pavel Datsyuk. You're not going to do anything.
I mentioned Tavares before, and now I recognize obviously when he was. I know when he was drafted, he was obviously the Islanders' number one center right away. But the point I'm going to make here is Tavares' skating, Marc, was dreadful in his first year, and
Correct.
the Islanders were an abomination of talent. I mean, you took a guy like Matt Molson, who was a nobody, turned him into a 30-goal scorer that first year. But Tavares, despite all that, being a terrible skater in his first year and having no talent around him, he had 54 points in his rookie year. Now, 54 points in your rookie year, despite getting, top line minutes, he still scored 54 points in his first year, and he was a terrible skater and had no talent around him. Like that, I don't know if that's what I'm saying. I don't even know if Lafreniere is John Tavares.
How many number one overall draft picks have to look at their coach to be like, am I going out next shift, or is it going to be somebody else? And before everybody says, oh, it's Lafreniere. And by the way, yes. And look, Chris T, you're right about this. And I know he's cherry picking this because you're backing up his point. I have no problem with this. Both can be right at the same time. Anthony's got the numbers.
Yeah.
And the numbers are backing up Anthony's point. But what I'm trying to say with this is when you don't know your role, you have to look to the coach and go, well, what am I doing? That's a huge problem. If I say that for a number one overall draft pick, that's a tremendous problem. The Rangers needed to have a plan. They needed to have a plan for all these guys. And it seemed like there was a plan in place for Kakko, and then David Quinn decided to blow it up because of a bad penalty. People forget this about Kaapo Kakko. Kaapo Kakko had, I believe, 7 goals in his first month and a half as a New York Ranger. And was he bad defensively? Oh, God, he was atrocious. But on the other hand, he takes a bad penalty in Calgary, sees the pine, and then he never gets power play time almost the rest of his career under David Quinn.
No.
So when you got somebody, and we can say it, by the way, guys, before Anthony replies, I got to say this. We can say this in our own lives. If your boss has no confidence in you, it affects your work. That's simple. Go ahead, Anthony.
Please like and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of great hockey content and an entertaining interactive podcast. So check us out and our library of videos.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.